There are some cases where the public believes they understand the story from the very beginning. A famous suspect, a young victim, a timeline that seems straightforward. But then the data starts to emerge. Late-night text messages, unexplained drives, gaps in the timeline, and details that slowly transform the entire case from a criminal investigation into a psychological maze that, even today, no one has fully pieced together. Tonight, Real Criminal Stories takes you deep into the case that has consumed social media across America for months. An abandoned Tesla, an old live stream, and a question that still has no clear answer. What really happened inside that Hollywood Hills home that night? A dark-colored Tesla sat silently in a tow yard in Hollywood. During the day, the California sun reflected off its black windows. At night, dim yellow parking lot lights stretched across rows of abandoned vehicles, creating an atmosphere that felt strangely surreal. For days, nobody paid attention to the Tesla. It was just another forgotten car in a city moving too fast to care about the things left behind. Until the smell started. At first, it wasn't overwhelming, just enough for a few workers to pause as they walked by. One thought it might be spoiled food. Another assumed something had been left inside the car too long in the Los Angeles heat. But the smell didn't go away. It got worse with each passing day. And when the Tesla was finally opened, according to investigative documents, what was discovered inside pulled everyone into a case that, even now, still contains far too many unanswered questions. What haunted the public wasn't just the nature of the allegations. It was the feeling that everything had unfolded in the middle of Hollywood, surrounded by lights, music, and social media, while no one truly realized what might have been developing behind the scenes. Because the person accused wasn't an unknown drifter. According to prosecutors, he was a young singer building a growing online following, someone with fans, money, influence, and a carefully curated image across social media platforms. If you watch the old live streams, you see a young man laughing at the camera, talking to fans, promoting music, planning tours. Everything looks normal, a life moving upward. And maybe that's what makes this case feel even more disturbing. Because sometimes the stories that haunt people the most begin with things that appear completely ordinary. The victim was Celeste Rivas Hernandez, just 14 years old. Take a moment to really picture that. 14. While the internet debates phone records, GPS data, surveillance footage, and timelines, one simple truth never changes. She was still a child. According to investigative documents, the connection between Celeste and David had lasted for months before the case exploded into public view. Prosecutors alleged the relationship began when she was only 13 years old. But one detail immediately stood out to many people. Authorities had reportedly known about the connection long before the homicide investigation began. According to the records, Celeste had previously been reported missing by her family in early 2024. During that investigation, law enforcement traced communications back to David. When questioned, he allegedly claimed he did not know Celeste was a minor. At first, some people believed it could all be a misunderstanding, until another detail surfaced. According to investigators, David allegedly had a school yearbook photo of Celeste saved on his phone. And with that one small detail, the entire feeling of the case began to shift. Because if he truly didn't know how old she was, why keep the yearbook photo? But this is where the story begins pulling viewers into a loop of hidden information that never seems to fully close. Because every time the public thinks they understand the timeline, another piece of evidence appears and changes the direction of the story. According to prosecutors, After Celeste returned home and her family tried to cut off communication by taking away her phone, David allegedly drove to her town and paid a middle school student to give her a new phone. $1,000. Just imagine that scene for a moment. A quiet California town, a teenager holding a brand new phone, and somewhere behind the entire situation is an adult man allegedly determined to maintain contact at any cost. That's when many analysts began asking a different question. Was this still a secret relationship? Or had it become something far more obsessive? In cases like this, behavioral experts often focus not on the final moment, but on the escalation beforehand. The late-night calls, the repeated contact, the constant communication. The feeling that the line between care and control slowly disappeared over time. Then, April 23, 2025 appears in the timeline. According to prosecutors, that was the night everything ended. Celeste was allegedly brought to the Hollywood Hills home by rideshare shortly after 10 p.m. Picture the streets around Hollywood Hills that night. City lights stretching below the hillsides, large modern homes sitting quietly behind locked gates, the distant sound of traffic echoing up from the freeway. Everything seemed calm, far too calm for what investigators believe may have happened next. About 20 minutes after Celeste allegedly arrived, the text messages began. "Where are you? I can't find you." According to prosecutors, these messages may have been an attempt to create an alibi. And if that theory is true, it would suggest an unsettling level of composure. But then another theory emerged that began to destabilize the entire timeline. Some independent analysts asked a different question. What if the texts were real? What if Celeste actually left after an argument? What if David truly didn't know where she was at that moment? And what if the late-night drive that followed wasn't about covering up what happened inside the house, but about searching for her? That was the moment this case shifted from a timeline that appeared straightforward into something much more complicated. According to location data referenced in court filings, David allegedly drove to Santa Barbara later that same night. Imagine that drive. A Tesla moving through darkness along Highway 101, Los Angeles slowly disappearing behind him. Long stretches of nearly empty road illuminated only by headlights cutting through the night. No one knows what he was thinking during that drive. No one knows exactly what happened. But according to prosecutors, he allegedly returned to that same area multiple times over the following months. Why? No one knew. Until another detail surfaced. Months later, Celeste's identification was reportedly discovered near that area, and suddenly, the entire case circled back to the beginning. Was that first drive connected to the disposal of evidence? Or was Santa Barbara part of a much larger story the public still hasn't fully seen? Then another detail emerged that made the timeline even harder to understand. According to investigative records, several items allegedly connected to the concealment of evidence were purchased after Celeste was believed to have died. Large bags, cutting tools, a blue inflatable pool, an outdoor burn cage. At first glance, many people assumed this pointed toward premeditation. But then another question appeared. If everything had been carefully planned, why were those items purchased afterward? And that's when the case began feeling like two entirely different stories existing at the same time. One story suggesting calculation, and another suggesting panic after something spiraled out of control. Then the internet discovered an old live stream. In the video, David appears inside the house with friends. Dim lighting, quiet conversation in the background. a setting that looked like thousands of other live streams online. And then, during one brief moment, he apologizes for the smell in the bathroom. Just a few seconds. Nothing direct, no clear evidence. But after the clip spread online, millions of people started looking at that moment differently. Because in cases like this, ordinary details often become far more unsettling in hindsight. But perhaps the most haunting part of the entire story is the feeling that even with GPS records, phone data, surveillance footage, purchase histories, and months of investigation, there is still a piece of the truth missing somewhere in the gaps. David is pleaded not guilty, and under the legal system, every allegation must still be proven in court. But the deeper people dig into this case, the more it feels as though the public is only seeing fragments of a much larger story. A story that may still contain pieces no one fully understands yet. This is Real Criminal Stories, where the darkest truths are often hidden between the missing pieces.